I think Shedeur's come miles in terms of his progressions, getting the ball out, his understanding of concepts. I think he's really come a long way.
Gabriel has zero traits for an NFL starter, physical traits.
Sure.
He might have the mental. Yeah. That's why I said I think he'd be a hell of a coach one day.
Yeah.
All right? But he doesn't have a single trait that says he's an NFL starting quarterback, where clearly Shedeur does. All right? We know he's got that arm talent. I love his touch on the deep ball. I loved it in college.
From this growing storm of hype and uncertainty, where Shedeur Sanders is no longer just a name on a draft board, but a full-blown NFL talking point, things are starting to shift in a way nobody really expected. What began as routine pre-league speculation has now turned into something far more layered, as players inside the league begin hinting at strengths, exposing doubts, and sending mixed signals that refuse to line up neatly. And now the real question is not just what they think of him, but why their opinions are pulling in completely different directions, and what that could mean the moment he steps onto the biggest stage of his career. The moment Shedeur Sanders' name started circulating around NFL circles, it stopped being just another draft storyline and turned into something closer to a league-wide conversation that nobody fully agreed on.
I keep the conversation intimate. We had a very lengthy conversation. He came to me and just, wanted to talk. And I'm always there, as said earlier, of giving my perspective on what I see and how I've gone about things. And ultimately, it takes a great deal of patience and hard work and a sense of resilience. You gotta want it. You gotta want it. And so I'm supporting him from where I am and wishing him nothing but the best with this opportunity.
From this rising noise of expectation and skepticism, where one quarterback's journey became a talking point across locker rooms, broadcast studios, and social media timelines, the debate began to split into completely different directions.
Back job in Cleveland.
I love this topic because we think that maybe even
IT looks skeptical.
Do you think he can be
Silly
successful?
me, I'm just looking at the facts. Okay, first of all, Deshaun Watson was a great quarterback in 2020, had 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. That was 6 years ago. Dan mentioned he's played 19 games. He didn't tear his Achilles tendon once, which is a catastrophic injury for quarterbacks. He did it twice. He played 7 games 2 years ago. If the 4 of us were running the Cleveland Browns and we had to feed our family based on the reasonable likelihood of good quarterback play, that is not the fact pattern we would be basing it on.
No, but if we were trying to feed our family, we probably...
Some saw a future starter being misunderstood. Others saw a talented prospect still needing refinement. And a few saw a case study in how perception can sometimes matter just as much as performance.
They don't care who's number one. The worldwide news right now is 3 is still 3. Why isn't he 2? The world wants to see him get this chance. This reminds me of the Bronny situation. Dylan, you want to be Quincy. He was the one who got that contract. You want to be 3rd. You want Shedeur to go out there and then have a horrible time, and then you come in and have good moments. So you look good. You going out there first, no one's rooting for you. Unless you out this perfect. Everything you do is going to be a target.
And from that tension, what unfolded was not a simple evaluation, but a collection of reactions from NFL players and legends that turned his name into one of the most polarizing subjects in recent football memory. To understand why his situation escalated so quickly, it starts with how unusual his entry into the league already felt before he even took a meaningful snap. Shedeur Sanders entered the NFL conversation carrying the weight of a celebrated college career, a high-profile football family, and expectations that never seemed to quiet down no matter how many games were analyzed or how many scouts weighed in. That combination created a rare kind of spotlight where every throw was dissected and every decision was magnified, and it did not take long before players who had actually been through the league started adding their voices to the discussion. Among the earliest layers of controversy came the unexpected tension inside his own quarterback room, where even harmless comments began to feel like headline material. Dillon Gabriel, another rookie quarterback in Cleveland's crowded competition, found himself at the center of attention after remarks during a preseason media session were interpreted by some as a subtle reflection on the environment around him.
what would be the best route for the Browns to take?
Start Shedeur Sanders. Don't let Deshaun Watson see the field, period. Full stop. Don't care. That would be the way to, you need to Deshaun is gone after this year. What good do you have by playing him this year? If he plays and he plays well, what? So he comes back to you after this year and tries to negotiate an extension, what have you. He's not a young quarterback. He's honestly been god-awful when he's been on the field over the last few years when we have seen it.
While his intention was framed as a general comment about the entertainment-driven nature of media coverage compared to the competitive mindset inside a locker room, the timing and phrasing sparked immediate speculation online. In a league where quarterback battles are already intense, even neutral statements can become fuel for narrative wars, and Sanders found himself indirectly pulled into that storm without ever being directly mentioned. As the noise grew louder, clarification followed, and Gabriel emphasized that his comments were not aimed at any teammate, but rather at the broader media cycle that surrounds professional football. However, by that point, the conversation had already taken on a life of its own, which is often the case when a high-profile rookie is involved. That moment highlighted something important about his early NFL experience, which is that perception often travels faster than context, especially when expectations are already high. One of the most talked about moments came from the Browns' defensive unit, where Tony Brown emerged as an unexpected but vocal supporter. Brown's connection with Sanders extended beyond standard teammate interactions, as he openly expressed admiration for the Sanders family legacy and the discipline that shaped his approach to the game.
They want to see him play to see if he's good or not. That's just the way it is. No one cares about the rest. It's him, then Myles Garrett at this point. When we're talking about jersey sales, he's number one. At this point, if you're Cleveland, why are you still putting yourself under this guillotine? I understand why. You don't want to make yourself look stupid. We wanted him. We think he's it. He is the proven one. And we don't want you to go out there and perform very well. Makes us look stupid that we picture and fit. So you're fighting an inner fight anyway. There's really nothing you can do. So if you're Shedeur, he's not in a position to say, what the you asking me for? What do I need to do?
That support became even more visible during Sanders' preseason debut, where Brown was involved in a highly stylized entrance that quickly went viral across social platforms. What looked like a theatrical moment to some viewers carried a deeper meaning for those inside the locker room, as Brown described it as a form of energy and motivation designed to help Sanders settle into his performance mindset. That debut ended up drawing millions of viewers and delivered a performance that included efficient passing and multiple touchdowns, immediately reigniting the debate about how ready he truly was for the next level. But the conversation around Sanders was never going to stay contained to teammates alone, because once NFL legends and analysts began weighing in, the narrative expanded far beyond Cleveland. Eric Dickerson, a Hall of Fame running back, added one of the most explosive perspectives by suggesting that there were broader forces influencing how Sanders was being evaluated during the draft process. At the same time, defensive stars and analysts approached his game from a more technical perspective, where strengths and weaknesses were discussed with far less emotion but just as much intensity.
Man, look, he's coaching up. He's coaching up. His routes on there, that's how offense, 7-on-7 is for the offense. The same way 1-on-1s is for the offense. You should not be, if you're a really good offensive team, you shouldn't be throwing picks in 7-on-7. When I seen, you got to go back and you got to look at the routes. I want to see whose fault is it. When I seen the interception that Shedeur threw, I saw it was a corner route and the cover two.
Shedeur threw an interception.
Shedeur threw one and Dylan Gabriel threw one. So there was the two quarterbacks that threw him in the 7-on-7 was Shedeur threw one and Dylan threw one. So I gotta go back. Watson did not.
Micah Parsons, one of the league's most dominant pass rushers, highlighted concerns about Sanders' tendency to pat the football before releasing passes, explaining how even small mechanical habits can have major consequences at the professional level. His critique was not personal, but structural, rooted in the perspective of someone who understands how quickly quarterbacks are punished for delays in the pocket. That technical conversation quickly escalated when other players and analysts joined in, turning a single mechanical observation into a broader debate about readiness, timing, and adaptation to NFL speed. His frustration centered not on Sanders' ability alone, but on the importance of giving young quarterbacks real game exposure in high-pressure situations where growth typically happens fastest. As these perspectives stacked up, a clear pattern began to emerge across the league, where some voices emphasized patience and development, while others focused on flaws that needed immediate correction. Malik Neighbors, one of the league's rising receivers, became one of Sanders' strongest defenders, arguing that his talent and leadership qualities were being overshadowed by narrative bias and external expectations. His comments reflected a belief that production in college, especially under difficult offensive conditions, should carry more weight than perception-driven criticism.
2 Achilles tears. What if any of this helps your franchise? If Shedeur can take a step forward and he can at least look like an answer as a franchise quarterback or give you hope that he could be that guy, that's probably not going to preclude you from drafting a guy next year. If this team wins more games than anybody thinks that they can, then again, that's a positive, not a negative per se.
That same division carried into the quarterback community, where Cam Ward offered a more personal perspective based on their pre-draft relationship and shared training experiences. Ward consistently defended Sanders' abilities and expressed surprise at how far he fell in the draft, reinforcing the idea that internal evaluations among players often differ significantly from external projections. His comments added another layer to the discussion, suggesting that those closest to the process sometimes see a different version of a player than the one portrayed in public analysis. Meanwhile, former defensive stars like Richard Sherman brought a more analytical but equally passionate defense, focusing on film study and situational context, where players are either fully praised or heavily criticized without much middle ground. That middle ground became even more evident in the evaluations offered by analysts like Dan Orlovsky, who repeatedly emphasized that Sanders' performance should be viewed through the lens of offensive line struggles and inconsistent protection. His argument consistently returned to the idea that quarterback evaluation cannot be separated from system context, especially when protection breakdowns directly influence decision-making and timing.
Who's the better quarterback? Deshaun Watson is the better quarterback.
Well, once upon a time he was.
Right now. We've seen Shedeur throw 10 interceptions.
Shedeur made some bad decisions last year, no doubt. But I can't put all of that on Shedeur. You can't just look at the numbers and not look at the tape and say, all right, this ball was tipped. The guy ran the wrong route. The guy cut the route early.
Who gets the interception?
True.
And it ain't like you're the perfect quarterback. That's his dad's energy that's been following him. He's been with him every step of the way.
Though.
He's not with him now.
As soon as he got in the game, Myles Garrett was
Why?
Because he got that energy.
As these contrasting opinions continued to circulate, what became clear was not just whether Sanders was good or bad, but how differently NFL minds interpret the same player based on experience, philosophy, and expectation. Some saw a quarterback with elite potential who simply needed time and structure, while others saw a prospect whose limitations and decisions created unnecessary obstacles before his career even fully began. And as the season continued to unfold, the conversation never settled, because every performance, every practice report, and every sideline decision seemed to add another layer to an already complicated narrative. So the real question is no longer whether NFL players like or dislike Shedeur Sanders, but why his name continues to divide opinions so sharply, and what that says about how talent is judged in today's league when perception, pressure, and performance collide in real time. Because now the debate was no longer just about talent evaluation or draft position, but about opportunity, timing, and whether the system itself was shaping the narrative more than the player ever could. Coaches and players across the league began indirectly adding to the discussion, not always by naming Sanders directly, but by reacting to the broader idea of how young quarterbacks are handled when they enter situations where every throw is treated like a referendum on their future.
Realize if you have that platform, yeah, it's gonna have to be, given to you. You kind of have to be, pushed into it or guided into it. Let yourself, be that person, have that role, and that's by, us as veterans enabling that. Those younger guys, the first, second, third year guys, let them know that this is our team just as much as yours. Take ownership of it, and don't be afraid to say what's on your mind if you see something.
That is where voices like Mark Schlereth added another layer to the conversation, coming from an offensive line perspective that rarely gets emotional, but often gets brutally honest. His analysis leaned into the idea that quarterback success is inseparable from protection quality and pocket timing, and that even highly talented passers can look inconsistent when the structure around them collapses too often. From that viewpoint, Sanders' early struggles were not framed as a reflection of ability alone, but as a product of timing issues that every young quarterback eventually has to correct if they want to survive at the next level. But while technical evaluations were unfolding, the emotional side of the debate continued to grow louder, especially from former players who remembered what it felt like to be doubted before proving people wrong. In his view, the criticism around Sanders said more about how the league reacts to outspoken young quarterbacks than it did about Sanders himself. That perspective created a fascinating split across NFL voices, where one side emphasized mechanical refinement and situational awareness, while the other side focused on perception, culture, and opportunity bias. And somewhere in the middle of that divide, Sanders kept becoming the reference point for a much bigger argument about how quarterbacks are evaluated in the modern era.
Just curious if you caught up with the Sanders family discourse and any thoughts you might have on it.
Yeah, I saw it, and frankly, Shedeur Sanders, based on the coaches I talked to, I did several Cleveland games last year. The coaches on the staff, they have no reason to lie to me. There was a lot of work to be done, and on film, and you study him, there was a lot of work left to do. So it doesn't surprise me that Watson's ahead of the game. He's a young player. And so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Even Hall of Fame players who had nothing directly to gain from the debate began offering their interpretations, often reflecting on their own journeys to make sense of what they were seeing. Kurt Warner, for example, approached Sanders' evaluation through a developmental lens, emphasizing accuracy, touch, and ball placement as traits that are difficult to teach. From his perspective, those foundational skills suggested a player with legitimate long-term potential, even if the learning curve at the professional level remained steep. At the same time, not because it defined him completely, but because it is one of the hardest transitions for any college quarterback entering the NFL. The speed of the defensive line, the complexity of disguised coverages, and the reduced time to make decisions all combine into an environment where hesitation becomes costly almost immediately. And that is where the discussion became less about Sanders specifically and more about what the league demands from young quarterbacks in general. Because every critique aimed at him began to reveal a larger truth about how unforgiving the transition to the NFL can be, especially for players who arrive with both high expectations and high visibility.
Storyline. It's like Bronny James coming in the game, bro. You guys are giving him the same energy, and he has to produce at the same level as his dad, but he doesn't have that. Deshaun is the most polished player to put in that position right now. Succeed or fail.
You don't know he can do it, though.
You do know he can do it.
How?
Give him an opportunity, because he's
You ain't
done
seen
it.
him do it in 5 years.
5 years.
The last person I seen do it was Shedeur.
Shedeur could have been better last year, absolutely. You learn from that, you adapt, and you get better. That's what's important going into year 2. And I understand what you're saying. If Deshaun Watson comes out and separate himself significantly from Shedeur in this race, then you go with him. But I think if it's close and it's back and forth, like Monken's been saying, that this is wide open, this competition, it would be more advantageous to go with Shedeur to see what you have in the future.
Meanwhile, the media layer of the conversation continued to amplify every small development, turning preseason performances, practice reps, and even sideline decisions into storylines that felt larger than they were. Analysts debated whether Sanders was being given a fair developmental runway or whether the structure around him was unintentionally accelerating pressure before he had the chance to fully settle in. Even decisions like limited late-game opportunities became talking points, as former players questioned whether young quarterbacks should be allowed more situational reps to build confidence under real conditions. Offensive teammates, on the other hand, often emphasized leadership presence, communication in the huddle, and the confidence he brought into practice environments, suggesting that what happens on the field during limited game action does not always capture the full picture of a quarterback's development. As more voices entered the conversation, a pattern began to form that made one thing clear. Shedeur Sanders was no longer being evaluated as just a rookie quarterback, but as a case study in how modern NFL narratives are created, amplified, and debated in real time. Every opinion, whether supportive or critical, became part of a larger ecosystem that extended far beyond the field itself.